Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm going to be talking about the One Project and some of the research that I did for a year and a half, looking into the One Project ministry and its theological contributions to the Seventh Adventist Church. Now, I'm going to take some time and go through some of the research that I did. You can access my research on the Compass magazine online, and you can also access it on intelligentadventist.com. I'm also putting out some of the recordings that I made of the Create Conference of the One Project. They never released those recordings for whatever reason, even though they said that they would once they got some funding. But now that the ministry is finished or it has shut down, and so I feel like I can release my recordings right now. And I invite you to listen to the recordings and then use it as part of your evaluation of what I'm saying, what the One Project is was about, and also regarding some of the recent events that have taken place. So just to give you a little bit of a background of the One Project, I started researching the emergent church phenomenon in 2010. It was sweeping the wider Christian context back then, and so I decided to take a year and read some of the major writings of the founders and figure out what they were saying and whether or not it was compatible with Adventist Christianity. So as I read their books and listened to some of their talks online and interviews and things like that over the course of a year, I came to the conclusion that the emergent church was not compatible with anything to do with Adventism. I ended up reading a series of articles on the Adventist Theological Society's website. This is the Journal of Adventist Theological Society, and on the emergent church by Dr. Fernando Canali back in 2010, 2011. And I realized from his analysis and also my own that the One Project was just not, the emergent church was just not compatible with the Seventh Adventist Church. So as I went on with my life, I've heard about the One Project starting up, and then over time, the ministry became somewhat of a lightning rod in Adventism for criticism from certain sectors of Adventism, especially the conservative Adventist sector. And so I watched some of the videos that the conservative Adventist preachers were independent preachers were putting out, and also watched some of their symposiums. And I began to realize that there was some kind of a misunderstanding about what the emergent church was. I wasn't sure what the One Project was, but I knew that their characterization of what the emergent church was very different from what I understood the emergent church to be. And then in 2015, late 2015, I was asked to look into the One Project ministry itself and for the Compass magazine and write up a series of articles, which I did. And so when I started researching the One Project, I went back and I systematically listened to every symposium speaker that had put out any information on the One Project or the emergent church. And I read all of their books, and being a pretty good student of Adventist history, I understood the arguments that they were making from Adventist history, their involvement of Ellen White's writings in their analysis, and just trying to figure out what they were saying and kind of evaluate the structure of their argument. Also, while I was going through watching these symposiums, I decided to take some time and listen to the One Project founders themselves. So I watched all the videos that the One Project had posted online for the last 5-6 years at that point. And I did some spot listening to sermons of the One Project founders outside of the One Project context. So at their regular churches, at various youth events and things like that, I listened to their sermons just to get a feel for their hermeneutics and their style of preaching, and also their theological mix. And so since Dr. Leonard Sweet was mentioned as being one of the people that influenced the One Project founders toward the emerging church, I decided to take it upon myself to study Dr. Leonard Sweet's ideas and kind of understand where he was coming from. So he's published like close to about 50 books, I think 49 to 50 books. I read every single one of them. I also watched several sermons of his, and also some of his training seminars and things like that online, just to get a feel for what he was saying. And then I did some background research into him, which I will reveal later in this video. So doing this extensive research, then I reached out to the Theological Advisory Board for Compass Magazine. Several theologians were on there from Andrews University that I contacted. Among them was Dr. Fernando Canali, Dr. Markovic, and Dr. Richard Davidson. And then I also reached out to La Sierra faculty, theological faculty at La Sierra University and also at Lomland University to talk about the One Project. Now, I didn't get much of a response. I didn't get any response regarding the One Project from the theological faculty at La Sierra because they just didn't respond. And then there was one faculty member from Lomland University that responded back, but he said he had nothing to discuss about the One Project, but he was available to just answer my questions on anything else I had. And since I hadn't read his books or really understood where he's coming from and his theological contributions, I decided to put that interview on hold while I worked out my research for the One Project. So that was kind of the immersive process that I went through for about a year and a half. I read close to 50 dissertations, read probably somewhere between 200 to 300 books, and then lots of symposium videos and sermons and talks and things like that. I also attended the One Project gathering in Seattle in 2016. I attended their Create conference that was held the day after, and also their Advanced conference, which was held in one of the evenings during the conference that was in Seattle. I also interviewed 2 of the 5 founders of the One Project face to face, and then the other founders, one of them agreed to be interviewed a few days later, but then the timing didn't work out. And so the other 2 founders asked me to put my questions in writing, and so that they would respond in writing so they could be more accurate. So I wrote 20 questions each for each of the founders. I may have done a little bit more than that in the initial draft, and I sent it out to them. They wrote back, one of the founders wrote back and said a few weeks later that the board of the One Project had considered all my questions and that I had posted the founders, and asked me to change the focus of my story from the One Project founders to the One Project ministry. Even though I was actually focused on the One Project ministry, I did want to get the views of the founders, and so I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding on the part of the board. However, they also asked me to modify some of my questions, to take out some of the personalized or personal questions that I was asking, to kind of get a personal view of what they were about, due to the nature of the attacks, the vicious attacks that they had received in the past. And so I acceded to that request. I took out some of the questions, and I boiled down the questions down to about 20 of them, and I asked very specific questions regarding the One Project and the views of the founders and how they constructed their theology. And then I waited for my replies, for the reply, and I never got the reply. Months went by. I contacted the several founders asking for a reply, and none of them replied over the course of the time. Now, I continued on with my research, and in the end, I published 5 articles, totaling close to 100,000 words in print. You can access it on thecompassmagazine.com. You can also access it on intelligentadventist.com. During the course of my research at the One Project gathering, I decided to record the interviews that I was taking because I wanted to be very careful not to attribute anything that was to the founders that was wrong or factually inaccurate. Due to the extreme nature of the vicious attacks that they had received in the past, I wanted to make sure that I was above board and transparent in everything that I did. I ended up publishing, with some edits from those founders, their interviews intact, just verbatim, and then I gave some observations that I had from those interviews. I also recorded the One Project Create Conference series, talks that were done by the founders and a couple of other leaders. I didn't release those recordings because the One Project themselves, the ministry themselves, also recorded that session on the Create Conference, and they said that they would release those recordings when they raised enough money to release it. And so I just held on to those recordings for my personal use, so that I could refresh my memory as I was writing the articles throughout the year and doing my research. And at the end of my, near the end of my publication of my series, when I published my article on the Create Conference, within a day or two, the One Project decided to close down their ministry, or they announced that they had closed down their ministry. Now, I don't know if they closed down their ministry because of something I said regarding the Create Conference, or whether they just decided that after 7 years, they decided that was enough and that they wanted to move on with their lives. I think the latter is probably the more plausible explanation. However, I continue to publish my stuff, and I published a 5th article called Beyond the One Project, and I talked about the ecclesiology of the North American division and the impact of the theological factions that I identified in the 3rd article of my series, and how those factions interact with each other and produce the kind of theological fragmentation that's currently present in the North American division, and it's spreading to other divisions around the world. And so within that context of my research, I am publishing this video if anyone wants to watch and kind of understand some of the background fascinating details that I uncovered. Now, going through the assessment, I'll make a quick assessment of the findings of the conservative Adventist ministries, the historical Adventist ministries that produced their research. And the problem with their research was that they began with the hypothesis that the One Project was emergent. And then they went and overfitted their hypothesis with all the historical data that they could find, and also some of the data that they derived from the One Project sources, such as their books and their talks and things like that. But if you actually evaluate the arguments that are made, it boils down to the fact that they relied on a single website that was produced outside the Seventh Adventist Church, on the emergent church and other movements in Christendom itself. And that website made certain accusations that were factually inaccurate regarding Dr. Leonard Sweet, and also regarding the One Project. Just in brief, talking about Dr. Leonard Sweet, Dr. Leonard Sweet interacted with the emergent church when it started in the mid-90s, and he tried to dialogue with those leaders. He co-wrote a couple of books with them, with some of the leaders, and also tried his best to kind of correct some of their theological problems. He was unsuccessful in his in trying to fix his theological issues that he had with the emergent church leaders. And then in time he became a staunch critic of the emergent church movement. It's ironic that the conservative Adventist leaders decided to use him, that pointed to him as being the influencer and being the person that influenced the One Project leaders, and as being the person that brought the the emergent church ideas into the Adventist church. Because if you actually look at the timeline of events, Dr. Leonard Sweet started criticizing the emergent church back in 2003, 7 years before the One Project ever began, 2 years before the One Project leaders ever began studying with him. And so this idea that he somehow influenced the founders to become emergent and then bring that into the Seventh Adventist Church is just really, really far-fetched and stretched. Further on they also relied on an early book by Dr. Leonard Sweet called Quantum Spirituality. He wrote it in his 20s. That he wrote when the New Age movement was ascendant in Christendom. And he was trying to reach out to the New Age movement leaders and some of their followers and try to interact with them. The same way that he was trying to speak to the emergent church leaders about 2 decades later. He was unsuccessful in that attempt, but that was used as a way to pin him as being a spiritualist or being a panentheist, and then tying that with the Omega conspiracy, the Kellogg conspiracy, or the Kellogg crisis in the 1900s with the Seventh Adventist Church, with his views on pantheism. And it just became this perfect storm for the conservative movement, where they tied pantheism, panentheism, the emergent church, liberal Adventism, progressive Adventism, all together into one easy-to-understand package, so to speak, and then they delivered it to the members of the Seventh Adventist Church in various churches in the North American division. Obviously, some of their sermons by these conservative Adventist pastors were sensational in nature and reached a wide audience, and then it produced a reaction that was almost visceral. Like people were having this visceral reaction against the One Project leaders, and some people went overboard in writing them hate messages and even targeting their children through social media online and at their school. And so in that context, I was asked to do this research, and I did my research, and I found that the conservative charges against the One Project being emergent were false, and that they had reached their conclusions using faulty theological models, and they had also engaged in practices that were what I would consider to be less than Adventist in nature. I was able to interview one of the conservative leaders. I thought about reaching out to every single symposium leader and try to get a sense of what they were saying and what they were doing. But at the end, my research was so much, and I was under the deadline to publish as well. And I just made the decision that to contact every single leader and try and parse out every single reason why they believed and how they believed and how they came across their evidence and all that stuff was just too much, and I really didn't need to do that. But I did reach out to some of the key leaders that were at the head of this symposium effort against the One Project. And one of them actually recanted his views after meeting one of the One Project leaders. The other leaders of the conservative leaders of the symposium movement that were trying to expose the One Project did not actually meet with the One Project leaders, which I thought was theological malpractice on their part. But having said all this stuff, when I did my research and I talked to this conservative Adventist leader, he confided with me that he actually changed his view of the One Project and he changed his classification of it. But nowhere in his writings or his public speeches since that time, since 2015, when he met with one of the leaders of the One Project, did he actually announce that he had changed his views. So to me, it's like if you have gone and trumpeted to the world that there's this huge threat coming to us, the biggest threat since Kellogg, and then you turn around and you find out that it's not true, that you were wrong, it behooves you to actually let people know. But unfortunately, he didn't. And so I'm going to discuss some of the reasons why I think he and others, when they came to this conclusion, they just simply decided to let it go, in his words, rather than actually let their followers know that they had changed their mind. So we'll discuss a little bit of that later on in the in this video. I'm going to pause this video right now, so this will be part 1, and then we'll do part 2.